Welcome to the party. It's Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. It's our Wednesday Care 11 edition of the Minnesota Football Party. It's on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Subscribe on YouTube and check out our audio on the Locked On Vikings podcast feed, where Luke Braun produces great daily Vikings content. Tons to get to today. JJ McCarthy with some comments at the NFLPA golf tournament that raised some eyebrows. Kwesi will make some comments in about 3 hours. What do we want to hear from him? Fanduel doesn't like the Vikings. What's up with that? It's all coming up on our Care 11 Minnesota Football Party, which is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. And check out our full lineup here at Locked On Sports Minnesota, the Ron Johnson Show on Tuesdays. We've got the Football Party with Arif Hassan, Luke Braun, and Luke Inman on Mondays and Thursdays, and the postcasts after every single big game in the market. All right, let's meet our Care 11 team with our little whip around to start the show. Reggie
Wilson, Care 11 sports director, and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, Vikings GM. You're going to the grinder.
I'm Julia Daniels, sports reporter at Care 11. As Sam called us before we went live, the Care 11 cronies. Excited to see what Kwesi has to say. Not surprised that Fanduel has no faith in the Vikings.
And again, I'm Sam Ekstrom, executive producer here at Locked On Sports Minnesota. Let's dive in. We can't put the QB thing to bed. It just won't go away. It won't go to sleep because Aaron Rodgers won't sign anywhere, and the Vikings won't sign anybody else. It is not going to go away until one of those two things happens. JJ McCarthy at a golf tournament down in Mexico. You would think that this would be an innocent interview. There'd be no headlines from this in such a calm and placid setting as a golf course in Mexico. But Kay Adams asks him a softball. When did you know you were going to be the guy for the Minnesota Vikings? And he says, well, they haven't told me yet, and I'm glad they didn't, blah, blah, blah. Tried to spin it into something positive. Is this a something burger or a nothing burger, Reggie Wilson, that J.J. McCarthy allegedly hasn't been told that he's the number one guy in Minnesota, even though he's the only guy in Minnesota right now?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of nothing. It's so crazy. Some of the headlines yesterday were interesting, hearing what people were talking about. The worst of them, I don't know if you guys saw, Stephen A. Smith, Shannon Sharp lit into J.J. McCarthy for no reason because they were ill-informed about what the comments were that J.J. McCarthy made. Like, they just kind of reacted to the fact that the Vikings hadn't told J.J. that he's QB1. That was it. That was the only thing. I don't think they heard JJ's comments or anything like that, because if they did, they wouldn't have lit into him like that. They kind of made him sound like he was like some like spoiled brat who just wanted to know, you know, his job was secure, and it really just didn't strike me as two guys, shockingly, two guys who really knew JJ McCarthy and knew his makeup at all, because, you know, anytime we hear from JJ McCarthy, he's very strategic in what he says. I think he gives us a little bit more than, you know, maybe his predecessor in Sam Darnold. But I think, you know, he has the right things to say. And I think what he said, totally fine. I was listening to Get Up this morning on the elliptical, and all the vets on the show, McCourty, Woody, they both were like, yeah, if you're a veteran, that's exactly what you want to hear from a young quarterback. And I agree. Nothing's been given to him. He wants to compete for the job. And if you go back to, you know, just his days at Michigan, he wasn't given the job. He had to compete with it. You know, the K McNamara was there, and JJ was like, you know what? He's QB1. Now I'm going to force Harbaugh's hand, and now he's going to play both of us. And then I'm going to play better than him. So then I'm just going to take the job, and McNamara is going to end up at Iowa. And so I don't think he's a guy who is afraid of competition, because it's happened. All the success he's had in high school, gets to the next level, has to compete for the job. All the success he had at Michigan, gets to the next level, he's going to have to compete for the job. And I think he understands that. And I have no problem with the answer. And I'm cool too with the Vikings maybe not like tipping their hand to JJ or what their plans are, because they want him to go out there and work for it and earn the job. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, Julie, I'm torn. If the Vikings did something so rash as to bring in Aaron Rodgers, then Aaron Rodgers is the guy. I mean, there's probably no competition going on there. If it's anybody else, so Ryan Tannehill has been thrown out there, Carson Wentz has been thrown out there, I'm not sure I would want there to be a competition. I don't think I would want the team to even open up that door. I think I would want them to commit to JJ McCarthy and allow him to fill that role as the number one quarterback on the team, to get all the best reps in training camp and the offseason, to be the number one guy, know he's the number one guy, and be allowed to fail a couple times on the job. He's going to have to go through growing pains. I don't want there to be a competition with anybody. Now, credit to JJ, who seems to embrace that, but that's where I stand, Julia. I don't really want there to be an open competition, even if it's just sort of a charade.
Why do you say that? Because you just like coverage wise, or are you thinking like it's not good for JJ McCarthy to have that?
I don't think it's good for JJ McCarthy. Because if you open the door to a competition, of course, if Ryan Tannehill's going against JJ McCarthy, and if you're going to honor the competition, the results of the competition, there's a chance Ryan Tannehill would start week 1. I don't want Ryan Tannehill to start week 1. I would rather have JJ McCarthy in that position with the opportunity to make some mistakes, but to grow from it. And by the middle of the season, by the end of the season, he's in a better place. I think that you have to commit to him at some point to get the most out of him so that he can know exactly what he is and feel like he can be or exhibit the leadership he needs to exhibit as the number one quarterback.
I don't know. Maybe it's my SEC roots. I just tend to disagree with that. I think competition within a team breeds the best play that you can have on the field. So if Ryan Tannehill ends up being a better quarterback than JJ McCarthy, then maybe JJ McCarthy is not the guy that they thought he was when they drafted him. So I think when it comes to any position in sports or anything like that, I think competition amongst a roster is always a good thing, unless it obviously turns into like some kind of feud that you have and now your locker room split, something like that. Things go that far. I would like to see, and I think maybe that's kind of, they're leaving that door open for that right now, and that's why they're in the position that they're in. Is I get what you're saying about you want to give JJ McCarthy some confidence, but I think JJ McCarthy would have more confidence in himself if he earned a spot and bred his own confidence from that, rather than having a team just say, here's all this pressure and responsibility, like, what are you going to do with it? I think he's just that guy. I think it goes back to exactly what Reggie was saying about he's had to compete for his position his entire life. And I think that just having seen what we've seen from JJ McCarthy, like that's who he is as a person. Like he doesn't want to be handed something. I think he's being honest when he tells Kay Adams, like he's glad, because I think he's a competitor. He wants that chip on his shoulder, and that's how you keep the chip on your shoulder, is if somebody's keeping you on their toes. Now, if it gets to a point where you feel like the team's just like, you feel like they're trying to push you out, and maybe they don't have confidence in you, then that's where you kind of get into some murky waters there. But I think that JJ McCarthy is the type of guy, and honestly, I think that any position that he's put in, he's going to step up to the challenge. Obviously the best that he can. I think he's that kind of guy. I think they've seen the leadership from him already. They've seen the qualities in him, and they like that about him. And I think an answer like that to Kay Adams, like I just think he's being 100% honest. Like I always think back to like when I was playing sports, and the best times that I played was when nobody like believed in me in those moments, because you have something that you're trying to prove to everybody. So I think a quarterback competition is a good thing. I mean, I think you come out with the best of the best. My own, obviously, anecdote is I was in school with Jalen Hurts and Tua at the same time, and you ended up with the best quarterback, even though it didn't end up being the guy that you started with to begin with. But I think from a coverage standpoint, and as somebody that covers the Vikings objectively, I think it's fun to see a quarterback competition too. Like it gives you something to talk about. It it breeds something among the team. Somebody's going to come out a true leader in these situations, usually, especially when you have a head coach like Kevin O'Connell. So I don't think it would be a bad thing for JJ McCarthy to have to compete for the spot. I think that he would like that.
I respect the viewpoint and the disagreement. Really good points made. I will add, though, that if they did sign Aaron Rodgers down the road here, then I would want a quarterback competition, and I'm not sure they would give it to me because
Right.
I think if they signed Aaron Rodgers, I think that you're signing up for whatever it is you get. It might be the 2024 version of Rodgers, which is terrible, and you may have to live with that. And that's why I think it's such a dangerous, reckless possible move. Please, Pittsburgh, just sign him today. Let's do a little exercise. Reggie, you're going to talk to Kwesi in about 3 hours. I want you to consult your notebook. Ask me one of your Kwesi questions, and I'm going to try to answer in the way Kwesi's going to answer today.
So, Kwesi, what are you guys doing at quarterback? Is JJ McCarthy your guy?
Well, first of all, thank you, Reggie. You do a great job on KARE11. And I respect the question. We like to look at this roster building from many different perspectives. And of course, I'm a Wall Street guy, right? You're always looking at value. You're always looking at, the best possible investment that you can make. And I don't like to be so binary about it. I like to, it's not black and white. There's a lot of different options that we can pursue. We like to keep those options open. We are really excited about JJ McCarthy. And of course, we're always evaluating what other options there might be to create competition on our roster.
Yeah, you probably nailed it. I'm just going to play that. Yeah, I'm just going to play this soundbite at 6 tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for contributing to my sportscast.
Now, what would you like him to? I think that's what he will say, or something. He'll dance around it, right? You're not going to get a hard, concrete answer from Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. So what would you like him to say? What would you like him to say to give the fan base a little bit of ease with what they're doing at quarterback?
We're going to give JJ McCarthy every opportunity to win this job. We're going to give him, we went out and signed these free agents to enhance the team, to make what he has to do, less of a burden. And I think we're going to give, we traded up for him last year, and we're going to give him a chance to take the job and earn it this summer. Like, I just would love to hear him say something like that, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, so Julia, if he gets a direct question, and I'll be Kevin Seifert for a minute. Hey, Kwesi, Aaron Rodgers still available, and you've reportedly considered him. Where are you at with that decision? What would you expect him to say to that?
We want to weigh all of our options at all times. We don't want to ever close the door on anybody. We're in this juggling spot right here. Where do we go with the direction of this team? But we obviously have JJ McCarthy, great player, great guy. He's been out there working. His rehab's going really well. We have full confidence in him. But obviously, we still have a lot of unanswered questions when it comes to who can lead this team. And I feel like he's going to say something like that. And then he'll mention something about obviously a lot of respect for Aaron Rodgers and his veteran presence and his experience. Obviously, his accolades speak to what he's capable of, something like that.
This is very good. If he drops the unanswered questions phrase, that would be the takeaway. That would be the phrase that we would all aggregate and say, unanswered questions about JJ McCarthy.
About JJ McCarthy. They're unsure about him. They don't know.
There's no faith in the building. It is interesting, and they waited as long as they possibly could to trot Kwesi out, right? He has not spoken about last week. He did not talk.
Nope.
Correct me if
and
I'm
then
wrong.
And then Kevin's going tomorrow at the NFL owners meeting, so it'll be even more interesting to hear what he has to say, because we just haven't heard from anybody. We've gotten all this reporting. The Athletic is reporting one thing, NFL media, ESPN, they're reporting other things. And it's just like, until we hear from the guys who specialize in saying a lot but not saying much at all, then we still are not going to get anything clear from this.
2 weeks of silence from the key decision makers.
With all those moves they made too.
All those moves, exactly. Very curious. Today will be interesting. Reggie's going to ask the hard-hitting questions, and we'll see if Kwesi delivers. We also have controversy at Fanduel. The Vikings getting disrespected in the NFC North odds. Discuss that next on our Wednesday edition of the Minnesota Football Party. We're brought to you today by Game Time. You want to be in the building live for the big events. You want to feel the energy of the crowd. You want to witness the unforgettable moments, the buzzer beaters. There's nothing like being there in person. Getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. That's where Game Time comes in. They make it easier than ever to grab last-minute tickets at unbeatable prices. They've got the curation feature, Game Time Picks, that makes it easy to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. If you look at the Game Time app, you can get into the XL Energy Center for one of the last few home Wild games, even though they never win at home. T-Wolves, I think, have about 4 home games left in the regular season. You can also check out playoff tickets for both those teams at Game Time. There are super deals and the lowest price guarantee where Game Time credits you 110% of the difference if you find better seats. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Have confidence. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Minnesota Football Party rolls on Locked On Sports Minnesota. So I brought this up with Ron yesterday. And I think we talked about it on Monday's edition as well of the Minnesota Football Party. Let me run it by you two. FanDuel odds for the NFC North. This is up to the second. And you know what? Since last check, I think people watched our show. I think people watched our last show and said, oh, we better hammer the Vikings line, because on Monday, they were the lowest odds to win the NFC North. Lions number 1, then the Packers, then the Bears, then the Vikings. Now, since then, the Vikings have been bet down to the point where they are tied with the Bears. They are both 5-1 to win the division. Regardless, whether they're tied with the Bears or slightly behind. Are you surprised, Julia, that the Vikings are not being more widely respected in the betting market with all they did this offseason?
I am a little bit surprised. I'll be honest. It's like, am I shocked that people are underestimating a Minnesota sports team on a national scale? No, right? Like, we talk about this constantly. It's a trend. I think it's kind of the same boat maybe they were in last year around this time, where they pick up all these guys and they're rearranging their roster, and so nobody really knows what they're going to look like. I think that them not having like their guy at quarterback right now. Sorry, my cat was digging through something. I thought someone was at the door. I think them not having their guy at quarterback right now is kind of what is planting a seed of doubt among the rest of everyone else. And I think that is the main factor for probably why they're in that position. I do think it's like a little bit crazy that there's so little faith, considering like Kevin O'Connell just won Coach of the Year, you know? He's keeping all his coordinators. His staff isn't like dispersed like Detroit, you know? So yes and no, I think, is my answer to that question. Very crazy of me. But I think people there are still wondering what's going on at quarterback, and people are also wondering, like, can they kind of do the same thing that they did last season, where they picked up all these guys in the off season and then were able to like use them as like the little puzzle pieces for this beautiful mosaic. And they're wondering, like, can they recreate that again this year? So I think maybe there's some doubt in that spot too. So just as somebody obviously who covers the Vikings, yeah, I'm surprised, but at the same time, like, I have to look at how like the respect that they get on a national scale all the time anyways, and have to say like, no, maybe I'm not so surprised by that.
Yeah, Reg, I mean, to me, it's not only a little bit of disrespect to the Vikings. I think it's an overestimation of where the Bears are at.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
and thinking of the Vikings 3 seasons under Kevin O'Connell, what they've accomplished in regular seasons, and this is a regular season bet, to say that they don't have a better chance than the Bears is just really, that's really surprising and a little short-sighted to me, to think that they can't have a chance to win the division when Kevin O'Connell, all he does is win with whatever quarterback he's given.
Yeah, and it seems too like after last season, it might be a little bit of fool's gold to, you know, place your bet on the Bears. Like, I know got a new coach, new energy, things seem to be turning in the right direction, but until they do it, you can't necessarily just like forecast that they're going to be in a better position. I think too, you look at all the moves that the Vikings made in the offseason so far, and you don't think that they're going to compete to be, as good as last year, maybe better depending on what happens. But I'm with Julia. It's a quarterback league, and there's so much uncertainty with quarterback with the Vikings right now. They could go with a guy who did not take a regular season snap last year, hasn't played meaningful football since the national championship a year ago. And there's just a lot of uncertainties that Vegas is not willing to place their bets on. And so, I kind of understand it. But again, as Julia said, they got the coach who's the QB whisperer. He just won coach of the year. Like, give him a chance to do what he does. And if it's JJ McCarthy has developed that quarterback with all this talent, like you got a double head monster with Mason and Jones in the backfield now that JJ doesn't necessarily have to do as much. And then the weapons all over the field on offense. And then, you add Rondale Moore, speedy guy, to the mix as well. Like, I think there's a lot to like about what the Vikings are doing on both sides of the ball. And I think the quarterback situation, albeit important and probably the most important position in all of football, I understand that. But I think you kind of have to trust the QB wizard, that he's going to work his magic. And with JJ saying that he's 100% and he can go through all of the offseason workouts and the knee is feeling good, and then he'll get training camp as well to work. And if the Vikings bring somebody in to compete with him, maybe show him the ropes in that QB room as well, someone who's been there, done that, not Aaron Rodgers, because we already know what the deal is if they bring him in. I think that's something that you can kind of get excited about. You can kind of get confident about, that may improve the odds. I think Vegas is just, they're a little skittish.
Yeah, I mean, I love what people are saying in the comments, and I'm totally in line with Bob saying you drafted him in the top 10, let him grow under KOC. Yes, I think that this is the first clean slate that KOC has really gotten to work with, who has this type of pedigree. KOC's gotten the most out of Josh Dobbs, Sam Darnold, best ball of Kirk Cousins' career. Jaden thinks that he could be anywhere between Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. I hope there's not a Bryce Young kind of floor. I know that Bryce Young turned it on in like December of last year, but that was a painful year and a half to get to that point. I hope it's closer to CJ Stroud.
There's better coaching around JJ McCarthy too.
Yes. Super fair. Great point. Also, speaking of CJ Stroud, which reminds me of the Texans, which reminds me of Stephon Diggs, big deal with New England. I was shocked at how big that number was. And it's the latest great Viking, former Viking, to go to New England. We'll see how he does there. When we return, we will discuss the Vikings' greatest roster weakness heading into draft season and how that could come into play. Very short pause here in the Minnesota Football Party. All right, told you it was a short pause. We are back on the Minnesota Football Party Wednesday edition with our Care 11 crew. Also check out Care 11 Sports Plus with Reggie and Julia talking about the Minnesota sports landscape. Before we get into greatest roster weakness, I did want to check in. Did either of you attend the press conferences last week? We had, I think, 6 of them with the new signees. Did anything stand out to you, whether it was just quotes that you saw, their presence on stage, anything pop off the page with those introductory pressers? Reggie?
So I liked Isaiah Rodgers and his like enthusiasm for being a Viking, and he was put through the grinder. I mentioned putting Kwesi through the grinder earlier. I mean, he got hammered on that gambling stuff from his days with the Colts that got him suspended for a year. And you know what? To his credit, he stepped up and took accountability for his actions with that. And I thought that really just kind of was impressive. It showed some maturity. He talked about how much he grew during that time, just not even as a football player, but just as a man. And, I think it's something when you feel like, the game is so big and you feel like you're a part of something. And then when it gets taken away from you, you realize just how small you are in the grand scheme of this big NFL world. And I think he was able to see that, to then come back, go to the Eagles, reach a Super Bowl. Like, he literally experienced the low of lows and the high of highs. And I think he talked about how, he has gone against Brian Flores' defense before. He's seen it from afar, and now being able to get a chance to get inside of the defense and get inside of the mind of a maniac, if you will, who is Brian Flores. He talked about how excited he was about that. Also, it's interesting. Kwesi took a chance on Javon Hargrave, and he really didn't play much last season. He had the injury that had him miss most of the season. And I'm interested to see, how that translates. He feels like he's 100% and ready to go. And he's excited. Jonathan Allen's excited. This is the first time he's been on a team other than the Washington franchise. First the R's, then the football team, then the Commanders. So 3 different iterations of Washington. But now he goes to Minnesota, and he's really trying to dig his heels in here. We've already seen him at the Timberwolves game, and I think that's very interesting. I also thought it was cool about how Ryan Kelly talked about how he was like, me and my guy Fries, we've been together for a few years now, and I was just like, yeah, come on over here with me to Minnesota. Let's tag team back up and do this thing. And I think what was the most interesting thing about that, talking about Hargrave and Fries, these are 2 guys who had pretty, depending on how you interpret the word devastating, but pretty devastating season-ending injuries last year. And that really didn't, phase Kwesi in the huge deal he gave to Fries, and then the deal that he gave to Hargrave as well. He took a chance. And yeah, I'm interested too, when we talk to Kwesi, what his thought process was. Obviously the Vikings have a great medical staff and sports science team. And we've seen guys who've been not necessarily injury prone, but maybe prone to some injuries, if you will, come into the Vikings facility and really have some of their healthiest years. So yeah, all those takeaways from me from the signings are interesting.
Yeah. Reggie, I'm so glad you said that, because I think after you get through the Rodgers filibuster with Kwesi, once you get through the quarterback stuff, I think the next question is, what gives you the confidence to sign so many players with injury histories? And not just little nagging things, significant injuries in some cases.
And multiple year deals for those guys too.
Like triceps. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Really big commitments for a GM that seemed skittish to give big deals for the first couple of years, probably because they didn't have a lot of money to throw around. Now they got money to throw around, and Kwesi was not shy about it. And think of how much he saved, right, by giving money to injured players. I'm sure he saved a lot because their value was diminished, but What kind of gamble is that? I think that that's a legitimate question that I want answered. Let me kick it to Julia quickly. Anything last week that popped out to you?
I don't think I was terribly surprised by the enthusiasm of everybody. I mean, this is an organization that's always been at the top of the NFLPA survey, right? People want to be here. Whatever, they can say whatever they want about the weather and the winter and this, that, and the other, but they have built the buzzword culture here in Minnesota, not just with like the coaching, but I think that Reggie's right in saying like the training staff here, we have the best of the best when it comes to orthopedic surgeons. Any of your health needs, like Minnesota is basically the place to be in the entire country. So I think that that's an aspect of this, right? But I also think, yeah, I'm not surprised by people being excited to be here. You know, I could take one look at the menu for each day when we're going out there and look at what they're feeding these guys and think, wow, okay, I can see why people want to be here, right? And they also don't have to pay for it. Like other teams make their guys pay for their meals at their facilities, which is crazy. I think they just take care of their guys, and also like maybe they haven't had the postseason success, but there's not been a season under Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi where it's like, like, you know, just everything's sad all the time. I think this is like a little bit off topic, but the one thing that kind of surprised me was that Jordan Mason was not very talkative. He just wasn't like a guy that like.
He got burned by the media last year, right? With the injury report fiasco. And I think he just stopped. He's like, no, I'm done. I'm done talking to you guys.
Yeah, it was a little bit hard to find a soundbite from him to use, but we wanted to hear from him because obviously that's a huge pickup that they got. But maybe he'll warm up. Who knows? Maybe he'll warm up and trust us a little bit more in the future.
I will say I covered this team for about 8 years in the locker room most days, and I always found running backs to actually be the best position group to talk. I don't know what it was about the running back archetype, but they're all really interesting.
Yeah.
So that's actually
talk all the time. Obviously, Aaron Jones is a great talker. He loves to chat.
Yeah, this is going back even as far as Adrian Peterson, Jerick McKinnon, Latavius Murray, all fantastic interviews. So that is atypical for Jordan Mason. But yeah, I mean, I think your point stands that the cultural reputation of the Vikings under Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, it's done a total 180. I mean, I think before, I think you had the facilities, but you had a coaching staff that was a little edgy with Mike Zimmer and company. And you had a trainer that people didn't like, that, you know, that came out after the fact. They didn't like the training staff. The head coach rubbed people the wrong way. Now you've got all the pieces in place. And I know people might find this comparison ridiculous, but you're kind of in a position where you're like the Miami Heat in the NBA. You're like the Los Angeles. I mean, the Lakers might be a stretch. I don't want to offend Reggie. You are in a destination in the NFL where free agents want to go. And it's almost like the Vikings picked out of a line. We want you. We want you. We want you. Didn't have to even give much of a sales pitch because guys know what they're getting into, that it's a good situation, what they're going to be surrounded by. This is an advantageous spot to be in for the Minnesota Vikings. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun when you can go just pick out whoever you want and build your roster up that way. Speaking of the roster, in closing, do the Vikings have a weakness heading into the draft? 29 days till the draft. They double dipped at like all their positions of need. They brought in multiple corners, multiple D tackles, multiple interior offensive linemen, multiple running backs. Do they have a weakness that you are slightly concerned about that needs to be addressed come draft time, Reggie?
Okay. So here's the thing. I think they did really well in free agency. The only thing that I think about is left tackle. So yeah, we do understand that they have Christian Darrisaw, but there's really no firm timetable on when he's going to come back. And I think that's something that is a little concerning, especially when you have a quarterback in JJ McCarthy who could be the guy, and now he doesn't have his blind side as protected as maybe he could. That was a pretty devastating injury that Darrisaw suffered last year, and he is quite the athlete. And you expect that he'll be able to come back, but at his size and the athleticism that he exhibits at that position, that is a pretty tough injury for him. And so, I know they took some time with Brian O'Neill when he came back from his pretty devastating injury as well. So I'm interested to see what they do. Not saying that they go out there and take a swing at a left tackle first round in the draft, but I do think that that's something that is a little more concerning than maybe some might seem to think about. I don't know that, you talked about Stephon Diggs, and the report is that he's going to be ready for week 1. You kind of understand that with the type of athlete and the type of guy that Diggs is, but with Christian Darrisaw, man, you just don't necessarily want to forecast that he's going to be back even within the first 4 weeks of the season. And, that's a critical time, especially for a new quarterback who's trying to get his footing. So I'm interested to see the cat do some more things like that to Julia. But I'm also interested to see what the plan is at left tackle. And then I think you can never have too many corners. So if they draft a corner first round, he's the best player available, I can see that happening as well. Just because, like, you look at the type of defense that Brian Flores ran in New England, especially when they won that Super Bowl, he relies on guys to be able to beat you man to man on the outside and really allow him to do some of the exotic stuff that he can do on the interior of the defense. I think what you've seen, especially for the big part of the last couple years, is him running probably more zone than he prefers to run. And now that kind of maybe hamstrings some of the concepts and things that he was able to do, especially last year when he's disguising zero, but really it's like a cover 2. I think he would love to run a little bit more man and really make things more exotic because as we saw as the year kind of went along, teams kind of got hip to some of those things that he did.
I'm with you at corner. I think the Vikings have plugged every hole. If they're in a leaky canoe, they plugged every hole to some extent. Now, how firm are some of those plugs? Is there still like a little spray of water kind of getting in? I think at corner, I think that's the case because I look at what their existing solution is. You've got one lockdown corner in Byron Murphy. Then beyond that, you're banking on a couple of years of Isaiah Rodgers. Well, he's never played like more than 500 snaps. Is he going to be your full-time corner? That's a little bit of a gamble. No pun intended, honestly, there. The other solution is Mekhi Blackman off a knee injury of his own. And beyond that, you've got a journeyman in Tavier Thomas. You've got Jeff Okudah, who's oft injured. You've got Dwight McGlothern. You don't have like really firm solutions at Dwight. That's your favorite. And I think that having a corner with big time potential from the draft could go a long ways towards solidifying the long term at that position. So I agree with you there, Reg. Julia, your thoughts?
Can I ask you guys a question? Who do they have left in the tight end room? Obviously, Hawk, Josh Oliver.
That's it? That's a good one.
I was just thinking, I was like, is that all they have right now? Because that probably needs to be addressed at some point.
So Tyler Warren to the Vikings, what you're saying?
That would be the most fun. He's not lasting till 24, I don't think. That would be the most fun pick they could make in the first round.
Yeah, I think that if there's somebody good to pick up there, that might be who of them to make a choice. Because also, like, TJ was not at his best when he came back from that injury. So I think maybe there's some concern. And obviously Johnny Munt went to the Jags, right? So
rest in peace, Johnny Munt. Yeah,
Brent Udinski said he's coming with me. So yeah, I would say tight end probably would be one thing that needs to be addressed at some point, right?
Yeah. Yeah, TJ Hawkinson's got a sneaky contract where if things don't go well with him this year, suddenly he becomes a little bit cuttable with the dead money going into next year. Yeah, I think he's got to have a good season, and I'm curious if they restructure him because they could actually save a lot of money on the cap if they did. But if they do that, then they make him less cuttable down the road, and I think they want to keep their options open. So keep an eye on the TJ Hawkinson situation. I actually am optimistic, Julia, that if you give him an offseason with JJ McCarthy, he didn't have that with Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
I think that there was probably a lack of chemistry. Darnold understood where JJ and Jordan Addison were going to be. He had never worked with TJ Hawkinson until week 8, week 9. Didn't have any reps with him at all. I think that will matter if JJ McCarthy can get on the same page with TJ early on. That'll help a lot. But we appreciate everyone watching and listening today. Check out Locked On Sports Minnesota and please subscribe. Find our audio on the Locked On Vikings podcast feed and check out Care 11 and Care 11 Sports Plus with our favorites, Reggie Wilson and Julia Daniels. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Tomorrow, Arif Hassan, Luke Braun, and Luke Inman join the party on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Have a good one, everybody.